Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sync24 TV. I'm your host, Kennedy Abongo. This is the Nationalist show. Today we are going to talk about why President Ruto was wrong to remove subsidy on fuel. Why did President Ruto remove subsidy on fuel? The reason that was given was that it benefited just a few cartels, people he described as cartels. So the expectation was that they would expand it to include so many people, but that did not happen. He removed it entirely. Then why was he wrong? Do kindly subscribe and click that notification bell so that you're notified whenever we post. On to the topic of today. Number one, why I think he was wrong. Fuel is one of the most highly taxed commodities in our country because the government collects per liter, it takes 64 bob per liter. That is very high for a government. So the solution for President Ruto would have been to wait until Parliament resumes. Then they can lower the prices of fuel by reducing some of the taxes that are on fuel. And you see that would provide a long-lasting solution, actually a permanent solution to the price of fuel, because it would now stabilize. But when you maintain the prices as they are and the taxes as they are, there is no way that the government can actually tell you and assure you that eventually the prices of fuel will come down. What will happen that the prices of fuel, if nothing drastic is done with respect to the taxes that are levied on fuel commodities, it will only go up. That is what will happen because the supply will be down and thereby causing the demand to rise. So the commodity price is more likely to go up, and if it will come down, it will not go beyond, let's say, 10 bob. Probably it can come down to by 2 bob and still eventually just increase. So the trajectory for this it will just increase. So that is number one reason why it was wrong to remove the subsidy on fuel at the point he did. What we are saying is removing it was not really bad, but at that point it was unnecessary because the taxes are still there. So a long-lasting solution would have been to wait for Parliament, and then you present a bill in Parliament to have some of these taxes reviewed or even removed altogether. The other thing why it was wrong is that he removed the subsidy on fuel, but now transferred it to fertilizer. So you wonder, why do you remove subsidy on fuel and take it to fertilizer, which also, or farming, which also requires fuel? So the notion that then farmers would have lower cost of farming in terms of, because fertilizer is just one component that is required in farming. There is the tilling itself, which requires machines. All those things, if you consider, because fuel is also being used in farming, so you wonder, why do you remove it and then take it to just one component in farming? So you are not really helping the larger population. So, and I can't understand why he did it. He did it because he had made a promise that fertilizer will come down. So the only way to do that is to subsidize fertilizer instead of fuel, and find a way of blaming the previous government or Uhuru Kenyatta's government, which they've begun to do, about the price or the rising price of fuel, saying, oh, there is no money, all those things. But now there is money to subsidize fertilizer because he had made that promise. So farmers who think that because fertilizer has been subsidized, therefore the cost of farming or the cost of farming production would reduce, are in for a rude shock. That cost would still be high because the cost of fuel has just gone up, and it's expected to even go up even the more. The other thing why it was wrong, number three, is that, and this is quite funny, that he removed the subsidy on fuel but retained the levy, the Kenya shillings 5 bob, 5 bob per liter petroleum development levy. The levy was meant to fund the subsidy. But the fact that is now removed the subsidy but now retained the levy, that is an outright, what we would call outright robbery. He is adding on top of what we already being taxed on fuel. Now is adding another 5 bob on top of it. The best move would have been if you are removing everything, though it's a bad move, then you remove plus that levy altogether. By retaining the levy, then you are expected to even fork out much more in terms when it comes to buying fuel going forward. But what is the solution to all this? As we've stated, the long-term solution is to ensure that they deal with the taxes. That is the long-term solution, and I think President Ruto knows this, and he has people who surround him with much more deep understanding of the economy or expert on this field. But then there is the politics of it, because the government needs money. The only source of revenue for the government right now, especially for KRA, is to tax people. The government is really unwilling to look for alternative sources of, generating revenue. So the only thing that they want to do is to push all the burden on the citizens. So you are carrying that burden on behalf of the government, giving them your money because they have just refused to think outside the box to look for other ways to ensure that you are protected. So that is why you are seeing a lot of businesses government is taxing businesses to near death, because a lot of businesses in near future it would be very, very difficult to operate in an environment where there is a license and tax for every other thing, because the government really, really wants money. So it comes after businesses, and that can work for some times, but eventually it will come to a breaking point, because you will now have nothing more to give the government. So at that point, and I believe we may not reach that point, the people always tend to turn against the government. Again, why am I also saying that they know that solution, but I suspect they would not take that solution? They are not going to take that solution because the people working in government wants to maintain the high level of life they've been maintained before. They want to maintain their allowances, they want to maintain their salaries, all those things, the good life that they have. So they are not really willing to push or to forgo some of this benefit for the sake of country. So the first thing I would have expected President Ruto to do when coming into office, probably something akin to what Arati did in Kisii. You have to look for how to block wastage in government so that you can sustain the subsidy on fuel. So what you do, because we are saying subsidy, the government cannot sustain it, but in truth we know that there is a lot of leakage in government. So if Kisii alone, if Kisii alone, we unearth, or Simbarati unearth people just being paid for doing nothing, ghost employees and all that, and ghost drivers. Take that to the national level, because if it is in Kisii, it is something that is a problem across the nation. We have them everywhere. So the starting point would be to block all these things, and this would require concerted effort and working with various agencies to ensure that these people are, they are rooted out. Every point of wastage is covered before you now come and provide a long-term solution, because that is the part of the process. You have to protect, you have to block the wastage or the leakage from the government. So the money that is retained or blocked from the leakage can be used to sustain the subsidy in the meantime, as you prepare for proper legislation on how to deal with the issue. But the drastic measure that he took by removing subsidy is only going to hurt people. And it has, and I'm saying this because the people understand just one language, that you promise them to do something, they expect you to do it. You promise them that fuel prices will be down, they expect the fuel price to be down immediately you take office, because that is what the plebs are. They do not understand the dynamics of economics. They do not understand the issues of taxes, because they don't just understand it. So for them, you tell them this is how things are going to operate. They expect things to operate as such. And Ruto, or President Ruto, understands that. That is why in his campaign, the most prominent message he gave was that fertilizer will come down. And that is now his priority. And that is why in the video we did about the Morocco SD SADR points to also what we are talking about, because his priority seemed to be fertilizer. He really wants to prove to the people that he is delivering in what he promised the people early enough in this early stage of his administration. But now in doing so, he's made some very, very wrong moves, like removing subsidies on fuel. Is just taking people back to that point where people were really struggling. There were long queues and all that. You don't want to see that. So farmers maybe can cry about buying a fertilizer at a much more expensive price, but you see, having cars or vehicles line up for fuel, how much more is the economy going to lose in the long run? Just having them do that. So there was a bit of miscalculation in that respect, I believe, and I believe that President Ruto did actually made a very big mistake in removing subsidy on fuel, and even worse still, in transferring the same now to fertilizer. Ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of our analysis today. Do comment and share this video. Thank you very much. Till next time.